As the revival fire continued to spread from 1930 at the city of Elisha and F1 all over the world, people were coming from all over the world to witness this revival and be touched by the power of God. The man at the center of it all was Apostle Babalola. Apostle Babalola had received a call to ministry in 1928 by God in his hometown at Odowa, and he was there for some time before he moved on to Lagos to join the Apostolic Church, and then they moved to Ibadan before coming for a special meeting at Elisha, where the power of God broke out in a pastor's meeting and a dead person was raised back to life, and from that moment people came all over. So Apostle Babalola became the center of attraction of the revival. But as the revival was moving, Apostle Babalola was so consumed in his work, in the work of the ministry, that he didn't give much thought to the issue of marriage. A lot of people began to speak to him to consider that aspect of his life. Among those who were pestering him was his father, Pa Rotimi David, who spoke to him about the need to consider settling down. And as was known about people of his own caliber, Apostle Babalola requested that people should give him time to seek the face of the Lord. It was recorded that Apostle Babalola during his lifetime never did anything without first getting clearance from God. Sometimes documents and history showed us that he spent weeks, days seeking the face of the Lord on issues, and it is only when he gets a final approval that he takes step. This place is called Powerhouse. According to Pastor, this is where Baba pray. I mean, what do you say, sir?
This place is Powerhouse, and Baba's praying. After praying, they slept here.
Wow. Okay, so Baba, this is a room for Baba, and this is where Baba sleeps. And this case of marriage was not different. Apostle Babalola took his time to pray, and then after praying, he finally came to announce his decision to people, and he told everybody, to their surprise, that the person that God will want him to marry was the then young lady Adeton. Finally, Apostle Babalola broke the news to everyone that God had spoken, and the choice that God had for him was Miss Dorcas Adetun Fowe of the Fowe family in Elisha. It is worthy of note at this point that the decision of Apostle Babalola was received with mixed reaction. There were individuals who were genuinely concerned about the apostle's marital state, and they wanted him to get married as soon as possible. To that group of people, the choice of whom apostle married was not an issue, as long as he was going to marry. But there was another group of people who had interest in whom Apostle Babalola should marry. This group of people belong to two categories also. The first category were women who had positioned themselves strategically to become the wife of Apostle Babalola. These particular ladies were expecting that they were going to be the choice, so they took active parts in a lot of ministry activities. They put themselves right in the face of the apostle. So when the news was announced that it was going to be Adetun to such ladies, it was a sad news, because that means their hope of becoming the wife of Apostle Babalola was lost. The second category of people in that category were those who had people that they had positioned. There were elders in the church at that time who thought they knew better who should be the wife of the apostle. In fact, they had their own designated candidate that they had been positioning to become the wife of the apostle. And their thought was that if such ladies were to become the preferred candidate, ultimately they will wield influence around the apostle. So it was a big disappointment and a shock to these two categories of people when the apostle came and said the choice of God for him was the young Adetun Dorcas Fowe. As of that time, Apostle Babalola was 31 and Dorcas Adetun Fowe was 23. Immediately the announcement was made, she was handed over to the elderly women of the apostolic church. As of that time, as that was where they were part of the apostolic church. And so the elderly women began to work on Dorcas to prepare her to become the kind of woman that would be able to handle the responsibility. According to the documentary, and according to documents that we lay our hands on, and the research that we conducted, one of such was a book written by one of the close ally of Apostle Babalola, which is Prophet Babajide. It was noted that Dorcas Adetun Fowe was a fast learner. According to the elderly women that were training her at that time, because it was the custom of the apostolic church to ensure that when a woman is about to marry, she's handed over to the older women to train her in the art of managing a family. They noted that Dorcas caught up very well and she learned very fast. So finally the two lovebirds had to get married, and the wedding was conducted at Efon Alai. On April the 25th, 1935, Apostle Babalola and Dorcas Adetun Fowe got wedded at First Aladura Assembly, Ijo Nisha, as they usually call it, Nisha Assembly at Efon Alai, and over 6,000 people were recorded to be in attendance as of then. Pastor Dubanjo, who was then the pastor of the church worldwide, was the later pastor of Christ Apostolic Church Worldwide, was present to wed them. Pastor Babatope, who was the pastor at the Apostolic Church in Elisha, where the revival broke out, was also there. Pastor Midayeshe was also in attendance, and a host of other men of God. There were dignitaries all around who attended the wedding at Efon Alai. Right immediately after the wedding, the couple settled down at Efon Alai. It's also interesting to note that there was no honeymoon. The two lovebirds had to settle into life almost immediately. May I also bring to your notice that just 3 days after the wedding, precisely the third day of the wedding, April 28, 1935, according to the diary of Apostle Babalola, which we had access to read. Apostle Babalola left his wife on a missionary journey to Owo. By 9 a.m. on that fateful day, he had started meeting with some of the church leaders, and from there he went on his way to Owo, and he didn't return back until several days later. This became the pattern of the life of this couple. Both Apostle Babalola and his wife had to begin a new path altogether. The brunt which was going to be borne by the wife. The couple settled down at F1 and from that very moment the responsibility began. It was recorded that Apostle will have to go on several missionary journeys, leaving his wife back at home, and they had a couple of people living with them. Record adds it that at a particular time they had about 47 people living in their house. So the couple from day one had no privacy. And it's important to note that a young woman of 23 having to cater for a large number of people, and because that was going to be the pattern, she warmed up herself to that responsibility joyously. So at the very early stage, she had to cook for everybody in the house. In fact, record added that she had to cook from morning till night some days, as she cooked morning, afternoon and evening food for those who came around. And you talked about the fact that there was always many people in the house. How did Mama and you people cope at that time, having, because that must have meant that the house is just open for everybody?
We didn't see it as anything disturbing.
Wow.
Because it was a normal thing. Wow. I think if there was any occasion before he died that we didn't see people coming in and out, that would be an odd thing. And it will be
so the norm is for people to be around.
Yes, it's a common thing.
Now on the average,
the
like
house
how many
is
people
always filled up.
On the average, like how many people are in the house per time?
I can't say this is the figure, because even when Baba is not around, people will come and wait for him.
Wow.
So the house was always filled up.
And then when they come, how do they feed?
They are fed by us.
Wow.
Most of the time.
So that would be a lot of pressure on Mama.
Definitely.
Oh, that will even lead me to ask you
most
this.
Of the time she was busy preparing food for this group has come, this pastor has come, they must all eat.
While Apostle Babalola was alive, this used to be the place for those who came for healing. In Yoruba, they call it Ile Agbawosan. So people who came for healing, and it was said that up to the back where that story building is, all through those areas, there used to be places for those who came for healing and those who are living with Baba, those whom Baba cared for. We were even told that when he was alive, up to 47 people could be in the compound at a time. And all of those people were the people Mama Akpeke was caring for and cooking for all through while Baba was alive. And sometimes our husband was not around. In fact, many times the apostle would have gone on missionary journey. It is also worthy of note that apostle many times brought home people from his missionary journey. There are people who got healed, there are people who got delivered, there are even people who are insane who got healed under the ministry of the apostle and had nowhere to go. They followed him home and the apostle accommodated them. And that means his wife had to do the hospitality business, taking care of all of them. Apostle lived by faith most of the time, and so was his wife expected to do. Many times when Apostle would be going on his missionary journey, he only left what he could afford, and that he gave to his wife. And before he will come back, what was left would have been exhausted. Kudos to Madam Dorcas Adeton, now Babalola, who was an entrepreneurial person. She was industrious. It was noted that she reared chicken, she sowed beans, she did a lot of things to be able to raise finances and meet up the obligation that was left for her by her husband. She had to cook for people, take care of those who were at home. These were things that she was doing on a regular basis, as we had access to the records.
So Baba would send beans to Mama through the train, and Mama would go and collect in Oshogbo and then sell. Then gradually Mama was selling on her own. But even before selling beans, she had been involved in other petty trade. Yes. And Baba will say, if anybody owes you money and you go to ask and trouble comes up, don't say you are my wife.
As they settled into this kind of life, record has it that Apostle was a man, though not always around, he showed much love to his wife. The two of them loved themselves, that they adopted pet name for themselves. His wife will call him Baba Biye, and he will call her Iya Biye. That was how they were calling themselves.
They have a slang they used to call themselves.
Fantastic.
Mama calls Baba Biye. Baba also calls my mother Mama Biye.
Wow. And God blessed them with 4 children. As soon as they got married, in no time they had babies coming, and God was so faithful to them. They had 4 girls. But it is worthy of note here that when Apostle goes on that his missionary journey and his wife was at home, there was really little or no help she was receiving. And many times a lot of people that stayed with them did not want to do anything. Madam Dorcas Adeton Babalola was noted to be a very strict disciplinarian. She believed in the need for people to do what they ought to do. And so along the line, some of the people who stayed with them, when she gained her foot, she sometimes was requesting that some of them will also be of help in the house, which we were told that some of these people resented. They didn't like the fact that she would want them to do anything. It's also worthy of note that as of that time, people only respect their pastors. They hardly give respect to the wives, because the African culture gives only more of the respect, all of the respect, most of the respect to the men and not the women. So this was also a contributing factor that made some people not to give her the deserved place in the life of her husband. It's also worthy of note that when Apostle comes back home from his missionary journey, Apostle was so generous that sometimes the food that he was given, when visitors come, he gives those food out. Some of the people who lived with them also noted that when they served Apostle food and they noticed that 1 or 2 persons in the house have probably not eaten or still want more, he will give out his food.
Even when he doesn't fast, will he eat? No, food is not important. Was not important to my father. Mama will have to force him to eat, as I can remember.
Wow.
Because there will be too many people to attend to.
Wow.
They want to be attended to, so there is no time for food.
This was really not pleasing to his wife, who felt he was not eating enough. And really, Apostle was either fasting or eating very little, and his wife wanted him to eat. Sometimes this becomes a little argument between the two of them, in which she wants her husband to eat. Another thing about the apostle is that he hardly rests, because there's little or no difference between when he was on the missionary journey and when he was at home. When apostle was at home, a whole business starts all over again, because people come in for counseling, for prayers, and sometimes the revival will start in their house. It was even said that they turn their sitting room to classrooms. Sometimes apostle will have to teach his disciples in their living room, so they had no privacy. All around, people were all around them. They had no private time, they had no private place. People had access to every part of their house, and this exposed the family to danger. And what kind of danger was that? The danger was the fact that almost every dictum and Harry had access to what was going on in their lives. If the apostle and his wife were to have personal talk, husband and wife, it was to the know of everybody, because relatively somebody can drop what they are saying here and there, because they were all around. And so that made most people make case out of husband and wife discussion. It was also noted that there are a few times that the apostle will come back from a missionary journey and he will be ready to go for another missionary journey the next moment, and the wife might not want him to go because she felt she just came back from one, and sometimes she felt he needed to rest. And instead of the people around them to see that as the normal demand from a caring wife of her husband, people felt she was pulling pressure on their idol. You know, as of that time, people idolize men who are such anointed, and you can't blame them, because the power of God was so raw in their lives. But what Madam Dorcas Apostle Babalola was trying to do was to make sure that her husband had enough rest, and then make sure that her husband was a little more at home. Of course, because you are the lot of church members around, they couldn't understand what she was trying to do, and then they misinterpreted it. This particular issue gave room for all kinds of rumor. There are primarily three of those rumors that we took time to research so that we can find what the truth is. CSC system or some other system that knew Baba, Baba's wife was a witch and all that. But I've known you for a while.
I don't know from where they've gotten their information.
I want you to give us this, because there was some who even said that she had given the witchcraft to her children. And of course, incidentally, I've known you for a while. Probably if you
have Christ in you, if you have Christ in you, there will be nothing hidden from you.
Exactly.
And people will look at you and say, how did he or she have this information? Yes, this person must be a witch. He must be something. She must be this. She must be that. And if people are expecting that because you have lost your husband, they feel you have lost all, and that you must suffer, and now they don't see you suffering, they will feel that probably you are being backed by certain power. Probably that's what prompted them to, but I don't know from where they got
now,
that,
some even,
that idea
some
or
even
information from.
Some even went as far as sometimes they want to raise prayer point. They will say, "Oh, if Apostle Babalola could miss it in marriage, that it was."
It means they want to miss it in their own marriage.
Now, there's this story that they also tell that, in fact, two of them, that one day Apostle was about to go out and then Mama said, locked his clothes and tore his clothes.
I didn't witness anything like that and during their lifetime.
That another time she poured palm oil on his clothes.
Can I tell you, they have a slang they used to call themselves.
The fact that there was no privacy gave room to a lot of rumor around the Babalolas, particularly the wife of Apostle Babalola, Madam Dorcas Adetun Babalola. One of such rumors was that she was forced on Apostle and that she was not the real person that Apostle would have married. Our research took different dimensions. We went speaking to different people and perusing different documents, and we found out that that was not true. Apostle Ayodele Babalola actually prayed before deciding for his wife. He was not such a man that they could just dump a woman on.
That's why even the Jews' wife is making some people to be. When the ministry was less than 1 year, one woman abused me. She said it in the presence of someone that she knew would tell you. She said that I was very ugly and that I don't fit my husband.
You?
That's interesting. And you know, poverty can make you. So, that day, that day they didn't meet me well at all. You know, you are looking for baby meal, you are looking for how to pay your children's school fees, you are looking for how to minister to your husband, you are looking for even you, and then somebody is abusing you. Sometimes you just say, God, just give me one opportunity to reply this person. So I replied to, I said, tell her that I may not be fine, but I know the person where I find pass. That was, I was trying to abuse her. Fast forward, some years after, maybe like 10 years, somebody said to somebody that, this woman, she must be bleaching. So I carried my microphone when I was preaching. I said, I heard that. So people said, I'm bleaching. I said, hey, I'm not bleaching. When you first knew me, it was poverty that discolored me. I said, my true color is now showing. How can I bleach? I have cancer. I can't bleach. So you see, hey, ministry.
Yeah.
You see all sorts. No.
Yeah.
So,
the rumors around the wife of Apostle Babalola was the fact that some people came up with the idea that she was forced on Apostle, that she was not the original person the Apostle was intended to marry. We dug into the story and discovered that that was not true. The Apostle was a man of prayer who took no decision without consulting God. In fact, one of the hallmark of the Apostle is that he is so insistent on what God says to him, and he will by no means bend on what God says. This was the same attitude he carried into decision on making a marital choice. So therefore, that rumor was not founded. Number two, there was a rumor that she stole chicken and gave it to the apostle and then teased him after he had ate the chicken, that if he was a prophet, he should have known. We dug into the story and found out there was never any time such incident occurred. We spoke with people who were old enough around the apostle at that time, and they said there was no time such incident occurred, and there were no stories like that while they were growing up with the apostle. Thirdly, they also came up with the story that Madam Dorcas Adeton Babalola poured palm oil on the white garment of her husband. Again, just like the other two, we found out that there were no incidents like that. It was just the figment of imagination of some people. However, there were a few occasions where she will cry and will not want her husband to go on missionary journey because she felt he was just coming back from one and he had not rested. There were a few occasions in which, as husband and wife, she would rather prefer that her husband will stay at home with the family. That much we confirm. As we try to analyze where some of the rumors were coming from, and one more was the issue of the fact that they said she was a witch. So we decided to explore all these stories to be able to find out the truth. We discovered that those rumors came from either of these three sources or all of the three sources. Number one were women who had thought that they would be the preferred candidate as the wife of the apostles, and some people, some elders who had positioned their candidates to be picked by the apostle, who got disappointed by the choice of Adeton. From the moment Adeton was announced, they became sworn enemy of Adeton. There was nothing she did that was okay in their eyes. So as a result, they misinterpreted every actions of her. They misrepresented her before the public. Number two is the people who actually idolize their prophet, their pastor. They saw the apostle as an anointed man of God and all of that. So any misunderstanding between himself and his wife, or any issue of husband and wife, were taken to the extreme by some of the disciples and the followers that lived around, and they rather misinterpreted and misrepresented her in whatever she does with her, whatever she did with her husband. So again, that's another point where some of those rumors came from. The third category of people that we suspect the rumor must have come from were people who lived in their house and did not like the fact that Madam Dorcas was a disciplinarian. When Apostle would have gone on his missionary journey and she's left with everybody, she was trying to put the home in order. In fact, a couple of people we spoke to who grew up under her training acknowledged the fact that she was a strict woman who ensures that things were done right. Even her own biological daughter alluded to that fact, that her mother will insist that things be done the right way. So some of these people who lived with them, who did not want to be trained, who did not want to submit to the process of discipline that she was mentioning on them, came up with some story, and they also will be part of the people who came up with that kind of story of she was a witch. And don't forget, in the African society, any woman who is strict, any woman who is strict is regarded as a witch. So as we look at the life and times of Apostle Babalola from different lenses, moving from place to place, speaking to people who were old enough when he was alive, we discovered that Apostle Babalola could have gotten no better match than what he had in Madam Dorcas at Debunking Babalola. She was an industrious woman. She was an hospitable woman. Above all, she was fitted for the kind of ministry that God had chosen Apostle Babalola for. Because while the apostle was away, she had enough strength and inner capacity to take care of the home and keep the home front running. Many times before the apostle returned, the little change that the apostle left behind for the upkeep of the home would have gotten exhausted. She had to make use of her own ingenious wisdom to be able to keep the home running. She was a beans merchant. It was recorded that she, unlike many pastors' wives of her generation, she rather ensured that she had things that she was doing to bring money, which, as you will see much later, it really paid off, because that helped her not to be in a situation she should not be after the demise of the apostle. Madam Dorcas Adeton was the one that literally trained all our children, because when apostle was not around most of the time, she had to ensure that the children were well catered for and trained and disciplined. And this she continued till after apostle died. And that's one of the reasons why we never had any of apostles' children become wayward or have bad reputation. Unlike what you will have in some instances where the children of a man of God like the stature of apostle would have will be involved in all kinds of vices. It was recorded that the children of Apostle Babalola are well mannered, and up till now they are also passing down the legacy to their own children. So we can say that Apostle Babalola had the blessedness of God over his children and his children's children. What more can we say about Madam Dorcas Adeton Fowe? Obviously, she was a perfect match to Apostle Ayodele Babalola. In many ways, she balanced up his ministry. She provided the needed support at home front that was needed to make the ministry of Apostle Ayo Babalola a well-rounded ministry. There are a lot of things that pastor's wife need to learn from Madam Dorcas Adeton Babalola. She was industrious, like we said earlier. She was a beans merchant, buying beans from the north to the south, and she was making the sales. She was loyal to Apostle Ayodele Babalola until he passed away in 1959. In fact, she stayed back in their house at Efonalaye until 1963, that she then moved from Efonalaye to Elisha. As soon as she got back to Elisha, she was left with her children to take care of. When Apostle Ayodele Babalola died, there was not much support from the church, so she had to raise her children by herself. It was from her personal saving that she was paying the school fees of her children. She was able to put money together to send one of her daughters to the United Kingdom to study. And she was also able to build her personal house. From building one house, she moved to building the second house. We can say of Madam Dorcas Adeton Babalola that she is a perfect match for Apostle Ayo Babalola. After the death of Apostle Ayodele Babalola in 1959, they had to do the burial ceremony up to 1960. And Mama Dorcas Ayodele Babalola was at Efonalaye until 1962. In 1962, she moved down to Elisha to an area called Anoye. And this place we are standing, this particular house was built by her. The land of this house was bought by her husband, Prophet Ayodele Babalola, during his lifetime. But he was unable to build a house. When he died, she continued the building of the house. She laid the foundation while Baba was alive. but she was unable to finish building it before he died. And so after he died, she was able to complete the building. And this was solely built by Mama Dorcas Adetun Ayodele Babalola. One of the things that never ceases to amaze us and beg for question is the thought that some people felt that Mama Dorcas Ayodele Babalola probably was possessed as a witch. But what we have learned show that she actually was in active service of the Lord and was fervent in her walk with God, such that in the CSC family, she was here as the Yajo of the church, patroness of the church. And when she died, she held that post till she died. And when she died, she was buried in this same premises. And here lies the tomb of Dorcas Adetun Babalola, the wife of Joseph Ayodele Babalola. From all that we research and ask everybody around, we were told that she was a wonderful woman, lovely woman, lively while she was alive. And she served meritoriously while she was the Yajo of CSC vocation. And we believe that God in heaven will reward our service here on earth and there in heaven. Mommy, we learned that you have a slight connection or relationship to Apostle Ayo Joseph Babalola. Can you let us into?
I was very young. Okay, let me start from my younger sister. She's a journalist, and one of the days they wanted to put up an article on Prophet Apostle Ayo Babalola, and particularly his wife. And she said everybody in the newsroom was saying, the wife is a witch, the wife is a witch. And she said she was the one going to write the story. And she said, let me look at the picture of the person you are calling witch. And they gave her the picture, and she found out that it was actually our auntie.
Wow.
And she brought the picture home to my mom and said, Mommy, this mama, what do you know about? And my mommy said, Mama Loro niye. I said, Mama Loro. Was Mama Loro Apostle Babalola's wife? And my mother said, yes. So when my sister told me that, I discovered something. Do you know Apostle Babalola? I said, I don't know him. I only hear about him. He said, but they always talk about the wife, and don't I remember Mama Loro? I said, I know Mama Loro now. Wow. Mama Loro happened to be my grandfather's cousin.
Wow.
And they were living in Legotedo.
Your mother is from Elisha?
Yes.
Well, we are going to run a story about this Elisha thing, because you also drank Elisha blood.
So they were now talking about Mama Loro. I said, we used to see Mama Loro in my grandfather's house. He was living at Akintola Road, opposite Okeanu. Wow. And that Okeanu was where Apostle Babalola's church was.
Yes.
So we knew a bit about that, but we used to see Mama Iloro.
Wow. Because our house is in a place called Anoye on Iloro.
I don't even know.
Yeah, Iroye, Anoye.
But I just know that sometimes he stays with my grandfather. I don't know what for.
Yeah.
But I knew at the time she was sick, and think my grandfather was saying she wasn't well taken care of.
Yeah.
So he had to go and take her and all that. Wow. So we knew her. I knew her physically.
Wow.
So when I started reading all these things, I said, people just say things they don't know.
Wow.
People just say things they don't know.
So really, she really was not a witch.
Witch? Can you even stand a witch? Do you know, when you see a witch, can you recognize a witch? Every woman is a witch. Once you want it to be well with your husband, they call you a witch. Because they say, don't mind that. She's a witch. So I don't know her as a witch.
So it's interesting that you are even close relations.
Yes. So Except
So when you were young and you go to Elisha, you people visit?
No, we don't even go to Elisha because my grandfather had already started claiming Ibadan.
Wow.
But their own great grandfather came from Elisha.
Yeah.
You know, but in the house in Ibadan here, yes, that's where we always see Mama Eloro.
Wow. So
So
Mama
not
Eloro
in
comes to
Elisha.
Ibadan a lot.
Yes, she comes to my grandfather. My grandfather is Chief Ese Oloko. So that's where we knew Mama Eloro to be her cousin.
Wow.
You know, so that's what I know about that.